Hi, my name is Lori McLean and I'm a registered dietitian working with 4 Arrows. I have been invited to help out with some of the educational piece regarding nutrition, and it's for a 90-day challenge, weight challenge that the 4 Arrows has on in their communities and in their staff here in Winnipeg. So what happens to food in the body and why do we gain weight? And to understand why we're gaining weight, we need to first understand what happens to the food that we eat. What happens to some of the drinks that we drink, whether it's a pop or a milk or any kind of other drink that we have. So here we go here. I've got a picture of a guy here. The person has their food and drinks, and the first thing that'll do is that food's going to go down our esophagus, into our stomach area, and then it'll start moving towards our small intestine. By the time most of our food reaches our small intestine, it's almost like a puree. It's like a baby food almost. It's already very liquidy. It's been mulched up quite a lot. And then what happens is in the intestines, in our intestines, we have a natural bacteria. And it plays a very important role not only in digesting and breaking up the food, but its job also is to help get some of those vitamins and minerals out of the food so it can get into the blood, so our body can transport it to all the cells where it's needed. So what happens, another part of our food is that when it gets down to our small intestine and it breaks down into these particles, a lot of our food, especially what we call our carbohydrates, that is one of the immediate energy type of foods that we have in our diet. Okay, these carbohydrates will get broken down into a very special sugar called glucose. And so if I was to have something like white sugar, that white sugar is called sucrose. Within 5 minutes after taking a swig of regular pop that has white sugar in it, within 5 minutes, our stomach, our intestines are going to convert that into a form of sugar called glucose. And that's why within 5 minutes, you'll start to notice it'll flood itself into the bloodstream, and you'll see the blood sugars go up. That's why especially those with diabetes have to be very, very careful about not having a lot of those sweet things, a lot of regular pop, things like this. We don't want these high swings in the blood sugars. And when we talk about looking at our weight and weight maintenance, we also don't want to see those fluctuations in those sugars, because I'm going to be talking about a little bit about later how these sugar fluctuations can actually trigger you to have more of an appetite later. And that's why you want to watch a lot of these high sugary type foods and regular pops and things like that. Now, another thing that you might eat next is fruit. Okay? And inside fruit or honey is a sugar called fructose. And there's a lot of research, a lot of you might have heard a little bit of research, a little bit of journal, like on the TV, sometimes you hear about fructose, but I'm going to be talking about how our body uses fructose. And this is becoming a concern because they're mixing this fructose, this fruit sugar, with a glucose, and they're turning it into a fructose glucose syrup. And this is what's causing some real health problems, not only in our adults, but in our children, and creating a problem. But you can find it in fruit. In the natural fruit form, it's a great thing because the fruit has fiber, it's got all these vitamins, minerals, lots of other good stuff. But when you get it in a fructose glucose syrup, the kind of stuff they're dumping on our sugared cereals like Fruit Loops, putting them in these fruit roll-ups and doing all those things, that's where that stuff becomes a problem. And that's becoming a health problem for our families. The next type of carbohydrate you might see is lactose, which is a milk sugar. Now, does this mean milk is bad? Absolutely not, okay? Milk is very, very important, and one of the things they're finding is if you are a milk drinker, the chances of you doing better with your weight loss and weight maintenance is much better. They've actually connected those that do not drink milk actually run into more problems with weight. And if they are drinking something like a pop or a diet pop or things like this, we're going to talk about how that affects their body. But if you're having those kind of things instead of milk as your liquid, okay, or your drink, we're actually noticing that you don't do as well if you're trying to lose that weight or maintain that weight, not gain any more. The next carbohydrate is a little bit more complex. They used to call it the complex carbs, okay? And the reason why, they take a little bit longer to break down in our gut and in our intestines. So this is the starchy stuff. This is the foods like our breads, cereals, your bannock, your rice, pasta, and potatoes. Now, one of the things I want to warn you about is that many of the diets out there are telling people to stop eating carbs. Okay? So everybody goes on the first weight loss diets, they go on these challenges, and in the first 2 or 3 weeks, you lose a lot of weight. And one of the first things I ask people, what did you do differently in your diet? Oh, I cut out bread. I cut out bannock. Now, we have Canada's Food Guide. And I can't stress that the importance of making sure that you don't short sell yourself of your portions. And in terms of grains and how much grains, which is the grain group, which is the group where the bread, cereals, bannocks will be, you do not want to shortchange yourself. But you also want to learn what is a portion. Okay? So 1 slice of bread is considered 1 grain. So if you're a female between the ages of 19 and 50, according to Canada's Food Guide, you're allowed 6 to 7 servings. Now, does that mean you have 6 to 7 bread in the day? No, you might have a couple of toast for breakfast. Maybe a sandwich at lunch with 2 pieces of bread. That's 4. And at supper, you might want spaghetti, but a half a cup only is 1 serving. So you may have a full cup. And if you want to look at a weight loss, when it says 6 to 7, always go for the lower number. If you're looking at cutting back on for a weight program. And instead of 7, have 6. So this is how you use this. This Canada's Food Guide, I know that all your communities have one available. If you don't, please let us know and we'll send some out. Because really important. And you can also order them online at Health Canada. And you can order, I think, up to 100 at a time. But this is a great little guide to give you an idea of how much is 1 serving. Now, 1 bagel. You go to Tim Hortons, or you go to the store and they sell these bagels that look like this. This right here is 4 to 5 slices of bread. So if 1 bagel is 4 to 5 slices of bread, you've already used 4 to 5 with 1 bagel in the morning. You've already used 4 to 5 out of your 6 to 7 for the day. You don't have much left. So we often say if you go to some place like Tim Hortons, or you go someplace, or you're ordering or getting bagels at the store or anything like this, those large ones, a half a bagel would be a portion, would be a serving that we'd recommend for a breakfast, not a full bagel. So this is where after a while you start to get to know, how many servings are in some of these products. So these are the ones that we want to watch a little bit more carefully, but we don't want to cut them completely out. And that's what many people will do when they start their weight loss diets. The reason why is this is very important. Carbs or carbohydrates are our number 1 source of energy. Very important. They're also very important, and I know that there's a big fad out there to go Atkins diet, go high protein, low carb. You have to be very careful. I've been in this business for years. I was here in the 70s when Atkins first came out. In the late 70s, I was a dietitian. We saw lots of problems. And there's many, many people who've even died from diets that are just all protein, all 1 food group. There's a reason why we have Canada's Food Guide. And it's set up so that you have something from each food group. And if you look at the rainbow, the smaller curve of the rainbow is the meat group. That means you have a smaller number of those portions, of those foods. The milk is the next one. You have lesser number of servings of that food group. Then you've got the grains, And the ones we really need to get more into the diet of, especially back home in your communities, is the vegetables as much as we can. And if it means starting up vegetable gardening, we've got Byron Beardy that'll be going out looking for those that are interested in getting gardens started. Awesome. Otherwise, it could be frozen vegetables. I don't care if it's canned vegetables. I know they're higher in sodium, but we've got to get more of those vegetables in the diet. And they have a very, very important, they play a very important role in not only giving us energy, but protecting us from a lot of other health problems down the road. And when you turn around and you go on a diet that says, don't drink milk, don't eat bread, you eliminate these, there's certain vitamins and minerals and nutrients in these food groups that you could be actually causing problems. And one of the things that I see when I see people drop and they go on a high protein diet and they are going on a low carb diet, what I see where they cut out the carbs, often sometimes within about anywhere between 8 and 12 months, they notice they're getting depressed. And one of the things we noticed a trend, and I used to work with a physician, he started putting them on antidepressants. You see, this carbohydrate is also very important for our brain function. There's a lot of functions in our brain, neurotransmitters and all these other things. A lot of our hormones, okay, require some of the nutrients that come from these carbs. So you do not want to turn around and go on a low carb or a carb-free diet, okay, and start cutting out stuff like your breads and cereals completely, okay? If you're wanting to know how much, when we actually look at people's diets, we actually find that even going out, let's say going out to a restaurant for a spaghetti dinner here in Winnipeg, about 2 months ago, we ordered one just to see. We brought it back, we actually put the spaghetti, measured how much spaghetti they gave us in our meal, and it came out to 11 servings of bread for one meal, including the garlic toast they sent. So this is where our restaurants, and sometimes we're overcooking portions. That actually, one of the first tips I can't recommend more is actually start to measure your food for the first little while, so you know what a cup of spaghetti looks like on your plate, or what does a half a cup of vegetables look like on my plate. Get a measuring cup out and actually measure what you're putting on your plate. So that you get to know what a serving looks like. After you know what a serving looks like, you don't have to measure every meal. But now you'll have an idea what a portion looks like and what a serving looks like. But a lot of times people aren't aware of it. They're going by what restaurants give. And that's not what we call a serving. Now, going back to our picture then. So we have the different foods that will break down into glucose. There are two other nutrients, okay? This is what we call carbohydrates. The green ones here are our carbs. So these are our carbohydrates. These are our number one immediate energy sources. This is the stuff that's going to fuel our body first. Now, we have another nutrient called protein and fat. Now, if we have too much protein, protein is made up of little building blocks called amino acids. Fat is broken down into little particles called fatty acids. Okay? So these two things, these two nutrients in our body still needs a little bit of fat because there's fat-soluble vitamins that are very, very important. And one is vitamin D. Vitamin A, vitamin D, E, and K. These are 4 fat-soluble vitamins that we need, and we need it from our food sources. So you can't go totally fat-free either. You could be running into other health problems. But when they break into these little amino acids and these fatty acids, this is then carried to the blood and is sent to our liver. And what our liver does is our liver then converts it into glucose for energy. Okay? So this is how our body uses fat and protein as well. So one of the things I want to caution, some of you are starting to take a lot of protein shakes. I've had a few people already call me about they're on this challenge, or I get it from other communities, especially sometimes the men or women, they get into these smoothies and they're dumping the protein. If you do not know how much protein you're actually adding, okay, you have to be careful because that can actually be contributing to your weight, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, it could be actually increasing a very bad fat in your blood if you do not have it properly portioned. And this is a very common thing that a lot of people will do when they go on the diets. They're going to have a protein smoothie for breakfast. And sometimes the scoop, depending on the product you've got, the scoop of protein that you're putting there is like having a big 8-ounce steak. Food is food is food, whether it's in a powdered form or not. So that protein in the form of amino acid powder is eventually going to get converted into glucose as well, and can contribute to the weight gain as well. So you still have to be careful. You might not be sitting there eating that steak, but if you had a little scoop of powder, it might be equal to the steak. So you need to know what you're having and what you're doing with that. So you want to be careful. So even your protein and fat, where the protein and fat helps someone is someone with diabetes, because it takes so long. It has to go to the liver first. That it doesn't let the sugars go like this. The carbohydrates make your sugars go up and down like this, whereas the protein and the fat, that's the thing that's going to help you get to lunch. So if you're eating a meal, when you look at it, and we'll do just kind of a graph here. Here's your blood sugars. And ideally, if you're someone with diabetes, you want to keep your blood sugars between 4 and 7 millimoles per liter. Okay? So if this is breakfast and lunch. So let's say you eat breakfast. You wake up in the morning and your blood sugar, let's say, is around 4.2 when you get up in the morning. After you eat your meal, it goes up. Okay, so as the food breaks down into glucose and goes into the blood, after you eat a meal, your sugars are going to start to go up. So it's going to go up. Now, what's going to help make it down? As the sugars go up in your blood, our body's like a very finely tuned computer. It knows our blood sugars need to be at a certain level. So if it's a fasting, you want your blood sugar between 4 and 7. But after you've eaten food, your body wants to keep it between 5 and 10. It doesn't want it to go over 10. So if you're wandering around with blood sugars over 10 right now, one of the biggest focuses you need to do right now is get that sugars down. Get it below 10, because I'm going to show you later that's going to make it very, very difficult for you to lose weight. When your blood sugars are over 10, that's where you're going to find it a struggle. And you're going to have a lot more trouble. And that's why your focus, if you have diabetes and you're in this challenge, your focus is to get those blood sugars under 10. And do whatever it takes. If the doctor, if you're around 13, 14, 15, that's not good enough. So this is where you might want to talk to your doctor. Do I need more medication? Is it something you're sneaking those extra snacks at night? Are you walking enough? Are you drinking water rather than pop? This is what you want to be taking a look at. Okay? So what happens is, as the food breaks down our body, sugars go up. Our body wants to keep it between 5 and 10. So it sends a signal to our brain. The brain sends a signal to a part of our body called the pancreas. And the pancreas makes a very special hormone called insulin. And why it's so special is, this glucose, all this glucose, every cell in our body, every cell in our organs, from our brain, our heart, nerves, muscles, every cell has to have glucose. It needs this special sugar to feed it. That's what keeps us alive. That's like me putting gas in the car. So this is like G for gas in the car. That's what what's going to keep our motor running in our car. Think of the brain, the heart, nerves, muscles, but all of this. This is like the motor in our body. This is the engine that keeps our body going. Think of the bloodstream as the gas tank. All its job is to hold the gas. So my van's sitting out there in the parking lot, just sitting there, and it's sitting, the gas, for the G for gas, just like G for glucose, is just sitting there. So my bloodstream is just like that gas tank. It's just holding the fuel. And this is the fuel, glucose, for my body. Now I want to get it out of there. And I want to get it into my brain, my heart, my nerves, my muscles, so I can chat, I can talk, I can do whatever I have to do. I want to get it out of there. But the way our bloodstream's made, this glucose here, it can't get out by itself. The way the body's made, it will let the glucose come in, but it's trapped in the bloodstream unless it gets help. And its help is insulin. The only way we can get this fuel that's going to keep us going out of the blood and into our brain and into our heart, it needs to hook up with insulin. Insulin is the key. This is why we often hear them say that insulin's the key. So if I take my car keys, I don't know where they are. I take my car keys and I put that key in the ignition. Okay, and I turn that key. Okay, what it's going to do is it's going to get the fuel through the fuel line and into the motor to run my motor. Think of it the same way. That insulin is the thing that's going to get that fuel out and get to the parts of the body so I can get up in the morning, I can walk, I can teach, I can think, I can read, I can drive. So very, very important. All of this is very, very important, you know, in the whole process. And this is, whether you have diabetes or not, this is what is happening. For those that have diabetes right now and they might be on insulin and they're on this challenge, very important that you do take your insulin. Make sure you're taking it properly, and make sure you're doing some blood sugar checks. And that's because for those that are on the insulin, that are in the challenge, your pancreas may have stopped working or it's not making enough insulin to clear the blood, to keep it going out and into the cell. So what's happening is there's not enough insulin, the sugars are going to start creeping up. As soon as those sugars start to go too high, as I mentioned, above 10, then you're going to have a real challenge trying to lose any weight. You're going to have trouble even maintaining weight. And that's why so many of those out there that have diabetes really struggle with their weight. They have a real challenge with it. And when I see them get their blood sugars below 10, that's when I see them start to be successful. That's when it starts kicking in. So if you're really trying hard and you're still struggling with those blood sugars and they're a little over 10, or if you have clients that are, their sugars are around 13, 14, they might want to talk to the doctor and say, you know, I'm really trying, I'm drinking water, I'm exercising, I'm doing everything right, I'm watching my portions, and I'm very frustrated. It's still above 10, it's around 13, 14. Do I need a little bit more medication? You might need a little bit more medication to help you. Don't take that, oh, I failed or anything. No, it's nothing to do with that. It could be just the way your body was made. It was something that was going to happen. It could have happened even before you're born. Everybody's different. So whatever it does, whatever it takes to get those blood sugars down is extremely important for you if you have diabetes. Now, this is where the problem starts to happen. So let's say I take everything you ate yesterday. So this is like me going to the gas station, okay? And you got empty and full. So let's say if I take everything I ate yesterday and it turned into this much glucose. So this is the glucose. This is how much I fed myself yesterday, whether it was sweet drinks or whether it was food. So this is glucose from one day of food. Look at it this way, the way your body uses the food that we have. All that food, it'll break out into this fuel, and this is the glucose for our body. So as the day goes on, you get up morning, you're throwing a load of laundry in, you're jumping in your car, in the winter you're having to scrape the windows, whatever. But let's say yesterday, my brain needed this much. I was doing a lot of thinking, doing a lot of stuff, so it used this much of it. Then my nerves needed this much, used this much for what I was doing yesterday. Let's say I went out for a walk. My muscles needed this much. Now what is unique about muscles, and I put over here, muscles are what we call glucose guzzlers. There's a really positive thing that where muscles help. So the more muscle mass you can start to build up, the greater you're going to find it helping with the blood sugars and the weight. So this is where I'll be getting back into that. So it needs more glucose than other cells in our body. Then you've got your heart. Your heart is a muscle. It has to keep working, so it uses this much. And then let's say this much was used by the rest of your body cells. Use this much. But let's say yesterday, maybe you had those extra snacks, okay? And these are the things where you're going to end up with this leftover. Number one, if you overeat. And one of the things you want to watch for. And one of the key things, one of the key causes of someone eating more than they needed is eating too fast. This is one of the number one causes why people have a tendency to eat more than they need. And the reason why is, you see this process here of going to the stomach, breaking down in the intestines, going into the glucose. When that glucose hits the bloodstream, this whole process, okay, of getting your hunger signals working takes 20 minutes. Most people will overeat in the first 20 minutes, within under 20 minutes. So you must wait a minimum. If you have a slow digesting stomach, if you're someone that gets a lot of gastric reflux, that means your digestion system might be slower. If you feel full longer than some other people, then you need to be waiting more than 20 minutes. You may need to wait 30, 40 minutes. And for those who have had diabetes for a number of years, what can happen is the nerves in your stomach can be damaged. So your digestion might be even slower. So you must wait a minimum of 20 minutes. And for those with slow digestion, you should wait a minimum of 40 minutes before you try to even have a second helping of anything. When people start going back for that second helping, it's usually within 20 minutes. Their body has not even told them, I'm full. And where you see this helps is when you go to a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant, remember they make you wait? You have your salad, you have a bun, and then by the time the meal comes, you're full. Like they made you wait, and you're looking at the meal going, oh, I'm full. Now you're just feeling like, oh, it's kind of almost gluttony now because you're just feeling full. And that's because your body, just from your salad and your little buns that you had at the start of the meal, filled you up. You have to realize your stomach is no bigger than a Bartlett pear as an adult. So it's already full. So there's your stomach, and that's the size of it. So if you had fluids and everything else, you stuffed it in that small little pear size, your body's full. And that's where we often will do our overeating, is usually within 20 minutes. So if you're going to have pizza, have one piece of pizza and make yourself watch a clock. Make yourself watch and wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes before you get to go back for a second one. And what most people will find, the hunger signals will kick in. You've got to let your body tell you, I'm full. And then it kicks in, and a lot of times you don't even feel like that second piece now. You're past that cravings. But this is where we often see the overeating will happen. The other thing is, you'll notice that when you eat sweet, sour, or salty foods, you're going to find you have an increase in cravings. This is the foods that you often binge. Have you ever noticed the kids that eat dinosaurs and stuff like this? They're just eating the package. They can't get the package in their face, in their mouths fast enough. And that's because, here's your tongue. And along the back and underneath the side of the tongue, there's some saliva glands. When you have sweet, sour, or salty foods, what it does is it triggers saliva flow. And saliva is another name for spit. And when it triggers that flow, it triggers the cravings. And that's why if you get into a stage where you're binging, let's say you start getting into that bag of cookies and you can't stop and you're on cookie number 6, go to the washroom. One of the best things you can do is go to washroom and brush teeth. You brush your teeth, your tongue, inside of your cheek. Okay? And do a good brushing. And if you can, use a hot peppermint or spearmint toothpaste. The reason why these ones seem to shut down the saliva flow a little bit better If you get orange toothpaste, orange flavor and bubblegum toothpaste, we actually find it continues that flow. You still get that craving. And so it doesn't seem to work as well. So those hot peppermint ones are good. And then you want to drink a glass of water after. Just plain water. Okay? So these are things that you can do to try to curb when you get those binges happening. If you travel and if you're going anywhere, get those travel ones, or if you're at someone's house and you find like, oh, every time you go to mom's house, that bannock is just too appealing. She makes the best bannock in town, and you can't stop at one piece, okay? Then you might want to just carry the toothpaste and toothbrush with you in your pocket in a little Ziploc, and just carry it in your pocket. And then when you get there, just when you're going to the washroom, you just do a quick brush, and that'll help shut that down. Because you'll notice that you don't feel like eating often after you've had that toothbrushing, after you've brushed your teeth. It shuts that whole process for you down. So that's kind of a tip that you can do.